Street Fighter 6 is the most popular a fighting game has been in my entire lifetime. This game is super accessible to a huge swath of people, and I think a lot of the reason that is because of the animation work that goes into it. I feel like not enough people give credit to how beautiful the animation is and how much love and care is put into every single ounce of the character's movement, and that's kind of the reason we don't get that many characters a year, but when we do get the characters, they're so perfectly fleshed out and incredible looking. Even things down to just taunts have so much love and care put into them. Alex alone has so many unique interactions when moves hit on punish counter. I don't think enough people will talk about this, but I want to change that. Today I'm going to be taking a closer look at every drive impact animation and ranking them among each other based purely on the animation. Now, I say purely on the animation, but I actually think a lot of things factor into this: how good it feels to land, the readability of the animation at full gameplay speed and scale, the sound design to an extent. They all sounded identical, I think, but I think the whole move you have to take into account. But anyway, I've been talking for too long. Let's get started. Oh, another important thing I forgot to mention is I'm going to be doing this all in Costume 1, Color 1, because I think that is what most of these were built for in terms of color and maybe a bit of animation. I guess the easiest way is to just start with the two guys who have nothing going on outside of their one scene where they are rivals or something. Luke's is one that I came into this thinking I actually don't like it that much, but considering he's like the main guy, I actually really like how this portrays what a drive impact is. He's kind of tucking in and turtling himself. You would think that's a very defensive stance, and drive impact has 3 hits of armor, and then he lets it all out in a big swing at the end. So I think this actually conveys what a drive impact is a lot better than some other ones would, and that makes sense considering Luke is the guy on the box art, and he's the guy a lot of people are going to gravitate towards at the beginning of the game. As far as the colors go and how it feels to land and everything, obviously it feels about as good as drive impact will. I really do like the colors too. I think the red doesn't make that much sense other than the fact that drive impacts are just inherently a little red. I kind of wish he was swinging out orange at the end there, because that is what color his gloves are. Or even maybe a yellow. Sandblast is kind of orange, so it's a hard call. That is a really nice explosion of color too on punish counter. I don't think I'm going to be going over everyone's punish counter drive impact, but for the record, that does make them all feel a lot better. I think starting out for Luke, we're going to place him in the top of A tier, and he might have room to grow depending on how some of these others go. Now, as far as Jamie goes, he's kind of doing the exact opposite thing I was praising Luke for doing, where he's doesn't really look too defensive. He's on one foot during the part that can actually absorb attacks and is armor. But the ending pose he ends up in is very forceful. I really liked how he stamps both feet down at the end there. He really leans into it too when he hits. Wow, I like that a lot. I guess I should also check the level 4 drink level just to see if it makes me feel any different. I like that his shirt's open, I guess. The colors here kind of do make sense because it's a lot of yellow and red, and that is what he is. He's wearing mainly yellow, and he has a splash of red on him, and more red the more drunk he gets, of course. But slowing down the game here, I do just think there is a bit of a problem with the armored portion of the move being him just leaning forward on one leg, because I don't really buy that that's the part where he's perfectly absorbing all of your attacks. And I'm going to try not to let that affect me too hard, but it is strange. Oh yeah, there is a little bit of blue in there if he doesn't have drink levels. Yeah, max drink level, it's just an explosion of red and yellow, and there's not even any blue left whatsoever. That's interesting, but I kind of wish it was a little more different between each drink level, if that makes sense. That definitely is interesting, and that's something more to think about, but even with that, I think I'm just going to keep him B tier. But I really do like the pose he ends up in, and the fact that it evolves with his drink level is really cool. We'll keep him A tier for now. Let's check out Manon next. She really extends her foot out there. That is so crazy. I always think of this as one of the longest reaching drive impacts, but I think it's just that her legs are so long and she really extends it at the end there. I don't think she's actually moving that much in the beginning. I'm gonna say, as weird as this is to say, she's just a bit jumpy in that final pose. She kind of snaps to it a bit too abruptly in a way that I don't really feel like Luke was doing, and I think the way Jamie was doing it actually was benefiting him quite a bit. I do really like the light blue and indigos that her punish counter explodes into. That really does feel nice for her, considering she has all these flowy, feathery moves. Oh, that's interesting. So I think she's kicking with the same foot she's kicking off of. What degree of motion would that even be? I think she does a 360 into a 180? She does. She does a 360 into a 180 kick, and that's probably why it feels weird, is she's not doing a full 2 spins, but instead she's doing a spin into a quick turn. Manon's one of my favorite animated characters in the game, and unfortunately I feel like this just falls short in so many ways that the only thing really saving it is the color and concept behind it. I'm really not a big fan of how jerky it feels. Ingrid. That is an incredibly nice flow. She does feel like she's moving a bit fast there, but it's a little more believable just because she has so much less mass to move around. Her colors make sense. There's a lot of gold in there. She's kind of just creating this gold rod to do a little spin off of. Mostly indigos and purples, because that is her main color scheme. On punish counter, I've never really noticed. There's kind of just an explosion of gold, and I'm actually a really big fan of that. I do think it's weird how high this one hits. It makes me feel like some things should low profile it, and I feel like that does come into practice a little more, but I don't know exactly how to set that up right now. That's interesting. I would have thought this one changed with how many stocks she has, but you can see here I'll do it with 4. And then I'll do it with 1. And it looks the exact same. I would have thought that it is one of those ones that maybe starts out one color and introduces more of the stock color as it goes on, but I guess not. Slowing it down here, I think something that does kind of get me a little bit is how the gold pole kind of shifts based on her weight. Whereas I thought it was more materializing and she would spin around it as it stayed static, but it seems she kind of has a bit of influence on it. Otherwise, it's pretty good, and that's, I'm not going to say unnoticeable at full gameplay speed and skill, but harder to see for sure. Another thing I haven't brought attention to, but I just can't get enough of, is her flourish as she comes out of it. That is incredibly, incredibly nice feeling. Ingrid, I'm actually going to say, is going to hold on to a very comfortable S tier because of how inventive the animation and idea is, and how good it feels to land, and the punish counter colors feeling that nice to use. Let's check out Lily. This one actually, weirdly enough, considering how small she is, has one of the best senses of weight. Like, this feels really hefty compared to the spinniness of the last two. It's also a very nice striking green compared to her normal blue costume. And she does catch herself in kind of an interesting way. It definitely feels like a base game animation because so many of the DLC characters have so much like after animation that just feels so special. And her getting back into her just normal idle pose feels a little snappy comparatively, but I'm not going to dock too many points for that. On punish counter, there's this really nice explosion into the color green, which just isn't really something I would associate with Lily. Even her wind stock is all kind of like a bright mint tealy kind of color. The point being that they picked a really nice color, and I like how it feels when you land a punish counter. Lily, I'm going to say, sits pretty nicely in A tier on the basis of the attack by itself. I am not going to say her dismount keeps her out of S tier by itself, but it's definitely not helping. Dhalsim's has always struck me as very strange. This game's graphics are obviously the most realistic Street Fighter's ever looked, even though it is still heavily stylized. Dhalsim, the first time I saw him in this game, kind of made me feel a little sick to my stomach, and I'm not going to say that's entirely gone away, but I've gotten better at dealing with it. His belly inflating that much to create the fire still doesn't sit quite right with me. I guess this is like a headbutt flame attack sort of thing. I would say that this is kind of an all or nothing feeling drive impact, where the stomach definitely makes me think this is either like his boss weak point or when you can't stop him from doing anything. On punish counter, it's kind of hard to see still. I guess it is more of a headbutt powered by the fire, but I'm not quite sure how blowing the fire out would cause him to swing his head down so hard. I'm just not sure how the fire comes into play. I'm sure they could have come up with a more creative way if they wanted to incorporate the fire, but doing it this way just makes it feel a little confused. Even looking at it in slow motion, I always thought it was more the fire that was hitting you, but it's very clearly a headbutt, which just makes me more confused now because I don't understand how the fire, you know, with him being so light and him being kind of a cartoony character, I don't understand how the fire isn't propelling his head backwards. It would make more sense if he like bent over and then blew up and flipped his head over the other way. Yeah, I didn't want to seem biased just because I think this character looks gross, but this is definitely going to be hanging out in C tier, and it might move down depending on how things shake out. No, actually, this makes so little sense to me, I'm going to put it in F tier. Let's check out Kimberly's. Kimberly's is one that I always felt was kind of strange that it was her knee she was attacking with, and her legs do feel a bit flaily in the animation. The colors are popping so hard, and the pose is so graffiti-esque that I actually just don't care about any qualms I have with this move. She literally looks like she's just a moving graffiti drawing. Like, she's staying perfectly perpendicular with the camera, and it's so satisfying to look at. I really, really like this one. I am absolutely just a sucker for color, and the way this pops on counter hit obviously, you know, helps. Slowing it down to half speed just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. She does kind of kick off her left foot only, but her right foot goes all the way front and then all the way back. Even though she's not kicking off anything, it looks like she's almost kicking once she's in the air. But it's so satisfying to see this at full speed and scale, and it's so inventive to her as a character and her gimmick with spray cans and everything that I almost don't care. That's going to be an incredibly easy S tier. Terry's has always felt a little strange to me, where it feels like he's building up a lot of momentum and stopping short. I think it's how fast his leg's moving here that's kind of the main culprit. You can see his left leg kind of flicks out instantly to get to the pose where he is kicking you. But this isn't really throw your entire body attack out, and it's kind of mimicking what Luke does in a way that I think is really effective. Colors make a lot of sense. He's red and blue, so it explodes in red and blue with a bit of yellow. Not 100% sure of that. Of course, his hair, right, but you know, not every character has their entire color palette represented in their drive impact splash. He has a bit of a snapback to his idol pose, but it's in a way that I feel like kind of fits him, and it's a little more believable than someone like Lily, because he is catching himself, but I just like the way he catches himself. It's just satisfying. Yeah, slowing it down a bit, you can see how I think he kind of just snaps to that pose a little abruptly. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, and the pose he holds when he hits you is very King of Fighters-y. I've never played any of the King of Fighters, but I just do see Terry hitting a pose like this, especially on like some sort of cover art or something. I think Terry's gonna sit pretty comfortably in B tier, if not for the fact that he's a DLC character and I kind of expect a little more from them. He isn't doing too much inventive here, and the posing and the flow of movement just leaves a little bit to be desired. Giles has always been one I kind of do like, because I like how it's closer to a sweep than anything, and I really do like how he braces himself to spin off of his foot. Again, this goes back to the pose looking like it's able to actually absorb a few hits, because he's really bracing himself before he springs off for that kick. The color makes sense. I think there's a lot more green in this than I think, considering this costume, but considering Giles always been kind of a green character, I get it. The punish counter feels really nice, and I swear every time he says rookie, it sounds like he's calling them a brokey. It sounds like there's a B before that, man. I don't know about you. You can see just slowing it down so I can get across my point here. It feels like he is really bracing himself and then waiting for just a moment to swing his body around and deliver a really powerful kick. It also leads him back into his idol very well. He catches himself in a very convincing way and just snaps back. I think Guile's going to get a pretty solid A tier for that one. Viper has something interesting where I think it's her power glove seems to be the focal point, and she seems to be charging it with her step forward. But this seems a lot more like a desperation attack, something closer to Jamie's, than it feels like an armored punch move. Now on whiff, this does look like a desperation attack, but when it hits, notice those particles that she brings with her fists. When it hits, are those added particles? They must be, because when it hits, it looks like she's really hitting you with a lot of like wind and power. And that actually adds a lot. I know she's a Street Fighter 4 character, so I think there's a lot of love put into that with the black ink effect and everything, and you know, that's fine, that's cute. Not gonna say it adds too much for me personally, but it does lead to a really nice looking explosion on punish counter. Her hand is kind of just flailing around at half speed. Like she's doing almost like a Looney Tunes winding your arm up kind of punch, if that makes sense. Of course, it's not going to take anything off because that's not something you even remotely see at full scale and speed. I do like the little flourish she has to get back into her pose where she just brings her hands back and she kind of flicks it away to get whatever dirt you got on her off. Yeah, I think Sea Viper is going to stay in about a B tier. There's nothing too crazy about it, but it's pretty solid, pretty middle of the road for what it is. Now, I feel like most characters who are big are going to have pretty good drive impacts, but that just looks like it hurts. Those are two very strong poses she's snapping into, and they really just sell everything about a drive impact almost perfectly, I want to say. She takes a really defensive stance, holds everything in, and then just bursts into this huge punching pose that is just... Man, that looks like it hurts. What's crazy is her legs don't even shift or anything. Like, all of this power is just generated by her torso, and it's kind of convincing. I don't know, maybe it's because she's 9 foot tall. Probably helps. Like, I'm just hitting this non-punish counter, and I'm convinced that it's just sending her that far on its own. I will say, with Marisa being one of the more theatrical characters, it is kind of a shame that after her drive impact whiffs, she just kind of snaps back into position. I would expect a little more from her. Yeah, on punish counter, that explosion into red, black, and gold just is... That's just great looking. The little streaks of gold, not even like just an overpowering third color, almost makes it look like a crown of some sort. Ooh, that's good. I think Marisa sits in a pretty comfortable S tier for how strong and striking that one is. I will leave Maya in her outfit 1, but if this gets in some sort of trouble with YouTube, I will re-record this entire segment. Maya's is interesting because she does have a lot of like special moves where she seems to put her fan away, but it kind of seems like the focal point of this one. She's hitting 2 spins in a way that I want to say is almost more nice feeling than Manon's, but I feel like that's because... Is it really just 1 spin? I'm kind of can't tell. What I'm saying is it's a little messy. It's a little messy, it's not perfectly clear what's going on. I'm gonna say on impact it feels right, you know, all of her biggest attacks do involve the fan, so it being flayed out, even though that's not how real life works at all, makes sense there that it would open up for her biggest, strongest attack. On punish counter, I think it's a little weird that it's a pink and white, but it makes sense, and there's a little bit of red splash in there, maybe to look like something. Something strange about this one is she does have 2 fans out, and I wish that was more apparent because I just thought she was opening 1, but she seems to be grabbing another fan in the spin and opening 2 of them in a big shield, but you just can't see that at all from this angle, and that's kind of sad because that's a cool idea. I guess now I can kind of see it now that I know what's going on, but you're not going to pick this up if you're just playing this game and never looking closer at the animations. Yeah, it actually looks like from the moment I press drive impact, the second one just spawns into her hand, which I've never noticed, ever, I guess. I think it would make more sense if, as she's spinning, she grabs it out from behind her back or something, and then has them both ready when she goes into the step, but the footwork here is really nice and clean feeling, and the actual pose she ends up in is very nice. I just wish it was more clear what was going on at full speed. Yeah, because you can see the other one just kind of disappears from her hand once she's done. Like, you can't tell that her other hand was holding one because it looks like it just snaps back. That's unfortunate because this one is really cool and inventive, but I kind of had to look deeper to even see it. Mai gets unfortunate beats here because I really do like the move's concept and everything it's going for, but it's just so hard to read at normal scale. Cammy's I've actually been thinking about since I had the idea for this video because she is just doing a lot of spinning and then a kick at the end. And I'm actually curious to know how many times she spins here. It actually looks like it's only 2 and then the kick, which makes it 3. But that's interesting because I thought it would be minimum 3 spins. And I know Cammy's whole thing is about doing a lot of spins and being tricky to pin down, so, you know, I understand that it's a lot of spins, and I guess by Cammy metrics, this is the most defensive she can get, is just spinning a lot. This is almost doing a better job at being kind of a ballerina-esque attack than Manon's is, which is really unfortunate because I feel like Manon should be better at that. The pose she hits, that's really striking. I like how her hands are around her face there. The colors are really nice. I like how it's just the bisexual flag, actually. What's going on in there? It is a mix of red, blue, and purple. I'm not sure where the purple's coming from, but I guess it's just, you know, the concept of mixing the colors, and it comes through nice on hit, but there's a lot of yellow on the hit, which is just this weird concept coming back of the character's hair just being in the hit for some reason, I guess, unless, I don't know, the yellow is just to make it distinct. I'm gonna say I like how her legs swing back into her idol afterwards really, really nicely. The rest of her is also pretty suave, if not, you know, a little underwhelming feeling, just kind of snapping back into place. This is, again, why those things like where Terry brings himself back in with a nice little flourish really makes him feel more, I guess that's just his character, and this makes more sense for Cammy, but it's just these little things. Yeah, on punish counter, there's a lot of that yellow explosion, but again, I'm not really understanding why that's on her, other than the fact that her hair is blonde. Even if this isn't just like a defensive pose, I can buy that she would direct attacks away from her just by spinning like this, so sure, this is the most defensive she can get. I guess Cammy is gonna go in, I guess A tier, because it's not perfect, but it's not doing anything wrong, so, and it's more inventive than, you know, some of the other ones below. Juries, I've never quite understood what she's doing here. Is she looks like she almost twists upside down, and I know she's twisty and that's the whole point, but is she doing sort of like a cartwheel here? No, okay, so she's twisting her torso around and then doing a pseudo backflip kick. That's a really neat looking way to make her do some freaky stuff and to allow the colors behind her to trail properly and just be like a weird X and a bunch of crosses, and also lend her to this really, really, really satisfying looking kicking pose. Yeah, I'm already a really big fan of this one, just posing alone. Not to mention the colors and that smear on her foot, just having the purple and a little bit of the skin color in it, plus the black and white, that is just really top notch. I like the purple coming through way stronger on the head because, you know, she's weird and purple, and Street Fighter characters are purple when they're evil. Yeah, that explosion. Being a huge explosion of black and purple with only a little bit of the white and gray in there. And that pose she hits, the way she's looking over her shoulder up at you as the victim, that is really, really, really cool. That is a little disappointing. Like I said, a lot of the base game characters don't do a lot in the way of returning to their idol poses, and she just kind of stands up and gets back into it, which is fine, and you know, you can only ask for that to look convincing, which this does, but I just wish there was a little something extra. I'm gonna say that despite that little gripe, she's definitely going in S tier. These are by far the strongest and most striking animations, and I think so far I'm feeling pretty good about how this list is shaking out. Chun-Li has a lot of effects covering her in the front, a lot more than the other characters, which is actually kind of strange looking. Makes it a little hard to read what she's doing, but she has just a really convincing kick and a really nice way that she folds her arms back into her idol. Yeah, so far this is looking really solid. This is about the closest you can get to Marisa as a character as flowy as Chun-Li, where this isn't two solid poses, but she flows into and out of really convincingly in a nice way. On the punish counter, there's a lot of yellow, which I guess is just kind of a recurring theme that drive impacts are yellow when you hit them. It does make sense for Chun, at least a little bit. She's always been kind of blue and yellow. I think for just being a really solid overall animation, that's going to get Chun-Li into a really comfortable A tier. Aki has a lot of weird stuff going on, which does fit her. You can see already this is some of that DLC privilege of having a really nice flourish coming out of the animation. Yeah, that is a lot more than a lot of the base game characters are getting. It makes sense because with her parry, she actually uses these chains to protect herself, so it makes sense that initially the first thing you're throwing out are the chains, which I guess are absorbing most of the impact, but it can also be seen as kind of a feint because, you know, she's a tricky, weird character. Okay, yeah, this is Juri, but a little freakier and a little more body bending. She's rolling on the ball of her hand over the chains and then kind of swiping at you with her other claw. That is freaky looking. One of my favorite parts about Aki's drive impact has always been the colors. I think she might have my single favorite looking drive impact explosion on hit, especially on punish counter. That's just so... That's what I'm talking about. See, with every other character, it's just kind of a generic push, push, like punch or elbow or whatever it is exploding. But this has a nice, yeah, that's a slash because she's getting you with her claw. That's not something anyone else has, and that adds a lot to her attack. And look at how much she's moving even in the punish counter. Whew. That wasn't very well thought out or well spoken at all, I feel, but that... I mean, that should just go to show you this is a pretty good one. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, but Aki is going straight up into S tier and chilling there. Now, if Luke is the poster boy, Ryu is kind of the most refined concept. I would say this makes about sense. It looks like he's kind of preparing himself by holding his arm in and then using all of that force to rotate his entire body just off his left foot and really swing his arm out there. And yeah, this is one of the longest looking drive impacts in the game because this entire wide guy is just swinging his body and fully extending his fist at you. Like on hit, I believe Marisa's, I believe this one too. He's getting hoisted into the air. The punish counter colors are really nice, just a clean black and white on punish counter. Yeah, slowing this down, it's just such a clean, simple punch, but that makes it one of the more impactful feeling ones, weirdly enough. This is where I'd like to see something a little closer to Terry's, because all the DLCs, you can interrupt their return to idle animation. Here, it's just so, like, he just threw out one of the cleanest looking punches of his life, and there is no return to form. And I know for Ryu that makes sense, he's kind of like an old master at this point, but like, give me something, man. You can see there's even a little bit of that in Hashogeki, where he, you know, brings himself back in a really poised way. Again, not docking any points for it. It's just really unfortunate. It's just a simple punch, but it's definitely one of the cleanest looking simple punches, so I guess we'll put it right next to the cleanest looking simple kick. Honda being a kind of sumo gimmick character, it would make sense that he's just as low to the ground as possible and then trying to toss you up on the end, and yeah, that looks about as convincing that he's hoisting you off the ground, because he is using his arms and entire body weight and force to hoist you. I do like the shifting of his feet. It looks like he's kicking off of his feet to move his body more than he's taking steps. On punish counter, it does feel a little strange just because this one looks like it's so forceful that it doesn't make sense that he's just knocking you out. I guess maybe it's like an uppercut making your brain touch the skull type thing, but I don't know, it makes it feel a little off, I guess. Also, not a huge fan of that pure white explosion. I just don't fully understand why it's just pure white and there's not more red in there, because E Honda's almost as black and red as Aki, so I'm not sure why we're just getting mostly white there. Now, as solid as it is on normal hit, it feels a little off on punish counter, and I think for that reason I have to put it in B tier. just because I feel like it does fall a little short, even though, again, I do think it feels like it could be better. Actually, thinking about it, we're probably going to have to start moving some of those execution failures down to C tier. I've had a little bit of a change of heart. I do think Luke's is very nice and convincing, but I would call him about the de facto middle-of-the-road B tier of this sort of attack. Okay, I've reorganized some of the tiers. Here's where we're standing now. Again, these aren't really ordered. I think you can tell which ones I like more and less within the tiers based on just watching the video. Now, for JP, something I've never understood is why it's so goddamn bright yellow. You can see he's using his hand to empower his staff with a lot of psycho energy there, and I'm just wondering where all this purple's going. I guess it's kind of going into the normal hit, but I would like to see a lot more of it here. He's using actually a very clean trade-off here with his hands, and he's striking a really nice pose when he jams the pole in you. Guy, he really comes down. JP's a tall guy, so when he's crouching down like this, you feel the force behind it. Again, the purple feels really nice on normal hit. I just wish we saw more of it in the actual colors themselves. A punish counter that comes through a lot clearer and also does have a bit of an explosion of purple, so I guess that's where I went. There it is. Although it's a little pink, but I'm nitpicking at that point. JP is maybe the base game character I'd expect to have a post-drive impact flourish the most, so it's very strange seeing him just return to normal standing, like nothing happened, hiding that purple little hand away, just like, I think JP is just for being generally uninventive and feeling kind of as forceful as you'd expect, can go just about middle of the road B tier. Sorry, I can't take him seriously in that. Ken's is kind of like Luke's, where it looks like he's putting his palm up to catch a punch and then retaliating, which is really, 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 really cool in its own way. Because I feel like that is the type of fighter that Ken is and has become at this point in the story. And I think the yellow being on him makes sense more than anyone else because his hair is actually yellow instead of just blonde. I like the mixes of reds, orange, browns, yellows, everything in there because of his inherent link to fire and also the new cool brown trench coat he has on. You can see right here what I'm talking about. It looks like he catches it and then just punches you in the jaw for even trying him. On punish counter, it's just a burst of fire and fire-based colors. No brown, no black, all red, orange, yellow. See, this is more than just a snapback to his idle pose. This is more of a catching himself. And this is the type of little flourish I was hoping to see on Ryu. I was hoping for something more than this on JP, to be honest, but it's interesting that Ken gets them of everybody because he really collects himself, and he doesn't seem to be able to collect himself that often in this game. He's kind of constantly screaming. Ken, I think, is gonna get an A tier for taking the concept of absorbing an attack and dishing one out and doing it his own way in a really cool way. Now, and Bison has a lot going on. I'm really not a big fan of his base costume in this game at all, but for what it's worth, the cloak makes this look cooler, yeah. Now, I'm not judging most of these from both sides, but I think it is worth noting that since this is the freaky fucked up hand, that it looks a lot more interesting coming from that side than the other one. He has all the colors you'd expect from Bison just by default and also by the standards of this game. And the posing is very strong. He really just reels back, takes a... Oh, hold on. He kind of just takes a... That's a big step, but I was expecting something a little more exaggerated. His upper body is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Once you look at the legs, things kind of fall apart. At full speed, it does look pretty convincing, but I just was expecting a lot more of an exaggerated step when I was looking down. The colors not only from the drive impact, but the special color he gets when his weird freaky psycho arm lights up is also a really nice touch. Adds a lot on hit, for sure. And on punish counter, it does lend itself to some very, very cool colors, rather than it just being, you know, purple or black or red, anything you would expect from Bison. It has this nice, very, very, very light indigo feel to it, maybe a grayish indigo. And he doesn't have much of a flourish out of the drive impact, but I'm really not expecting anything like that from this guy. Bison, I'm gonna say, sits pretty comfortably on B tier for having a really exaggerated, albeit really basic punch. Ed, however, I have to stop doing this. I can't take them in their stupid fucking costumes. Ed has a lot going for him, but he does have one little thing that I can already tell I have a really big problem with, and I'll bring that up in a second after I go over the basics. It's a very nice, convincing looking punch. I like how his head completely disappears behind his silhouette, the hood moving up. So much of this looks so nice. Obviously you can see his head the whole time over on this side. The footwork is very clean. I really like the flourish he gets where he pulls his arm back and does a little duck afterwards. That's all really nice. But take a very close look at him when I press this initially. Doesn't it look like he kind of just teleports backwards a little bit? Like, he's not really spinning off of a foot, he's kind of just teleporting into the pose. See if we can see it in slow motion. Yeah, that's not a convincing duck and turn. He's just teleporting backwards into the beginning pose. And it sucks because I love everything else about this attack so much, but that is so obvious even from like full normal speed. I cannot ignore that. Of course, the colors all make sense. A lot of blues and a little bit of red on the fist, on impact, and on punish counter. Huge explosion, red, blue, dark blue, everything nice. For Ed, that's just gonna have to be a C tier because that's just such a noticeable thing to get wrong immediately, but the rest of it is so good I can't put it in F tier. But he just teleports into the position, and it's so obvious and so much more jarring than on any other character. Now, Akuma is one that I was actually looking at while figuring out the settings for this video, and I did a little bit of looking on my own without anything else. I originally thought that he was like shoulder bashing, and then I was like, no, that's not quite right, because here you can see it looks like he ends in a shoulder bash, but here he kind of looks like he's ending in a headbutt. But what it is he's actually snapping his fist out and taking it back so fast that I was having trouble looking at it, unless you're looking at his fist. Like, look at his head here. You're like, okay, that might be like a shoulder bash of some sort. Look at his fist here, the fist that's not moving, his right fist. You can see it just snapping forward, and that comes through a lot more on punish counter, but here it just kind of looks like he's barking at them and they're flying away, which is fine, it would make sense. He has a little bit of flourish, and as far as the rest of the animation itself goes, I really do like how he snaps himself forward and pulls back. The full step into it is really convincing. I mean, of course Akuma's looks really good. This character has so much love put into his animations. You can see here if I slow down the game a bit, just watch his right fist. Yeah, he snaps it so fast you almost can't see it, and it barely even comes through on hit. It looks like it hits after he's already retracted his fist. On punish counter, it is a little more obvious that he hits with his fist because it still has the effect on it, and it looks like he's pulling away from you as if he just ripped your heart out or something. And it also allows him to look at the camera and talk shit on you, and you know, that's appreciated. Now Elena, this is actually one where the color doesn't feel like it matches her base costume as much, but pink and green is my favorite color combination, so I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to choose to ignore that. She has a bit of the Ed thing going on where it does look like she's actually just teleporting into being upside down. That definitely does take away from it a little bit, but it doesn't feel as bad because that's a concession they had to make for her because she doesn't use her fists in any single attack on her entire kit. So it's a little more forgivable here, whereas with Ed, everyone in the game attacks with their fists except Elena, so that really isn't an excuse. Doing a handstand and kicking down is, you know, a really convincing way. It looks like she's bucking you away on normal hit. Oh, she actually springs quite nicely back into her idol. That is really nice looking, actually. I'm convinced. On punish counter, it kind of has the Honda thing going on where it looks like she should be launching them a little more, but no, it does. It just does. You know, what are you gonna do? There's not too much. What other way can you have her attack with her feet and then end standing convincingly in a way that it doesn't look like she should be absolutely launching you across the screen? Actually forgot to rank Akuma, so well, I guess we'll be doing them together. Akuma goes... I guess we'll put him A tier because it is very cool, even though it is kind of just a punch, but it's a punch done in a very Akuma way, and that's why Ken's up here, so it makes sense to put him up here too. Elena, I guess I'll put her... I would really like to put her A tier because I'm a sucker for the pink and green, but she does have the bit of the teleporting problem, even though every problem it has can be written off as how else would you do this, but the problems still are there, and I would feel bad putting her so high for things I have characters in C tier for. But maybe I'm just biased because I like her a lot, who knows. Zangief. This one has always been very striking to me. Again, kind of hard to fuck it up on a big character. I mean, that just looks like it fucking hurts, doesn't it? I like how he has the little bit of yellow where his wrist rings are. Now this is, again, where I would expect a much bigger, much more exaggerated step, like I was with Bison, and he does kind of just slide forward with his other hand, but whatever, drive nonsense going on, I'll forgive it. On hit, yeah, I mean, sure, you're launching someone. I'm not really concerned about how the normal hit looks anyway, but I mean, if Zangief hits anyone, I'll be convinced that they're getting sent back that far. Something I do want to say is I really just do like how far he's reeling back his hands to bring them in and chop you down, I guess. It looks like he's cupping his hands. Yeah, on punish counter, it makes sense. I think this would kill most people when they got hit by it, so the red and yellow makes a lot of sense. He's still got a bit of yellow going on. Zangief is very red, like the Cyclone. So I think pretty much everything here is working for me pretty satisfyingly. Zangief goes pretty handily into A tier for that reason. Now Alex. This has always been kind of a strange one because I wonder why he hits so high, but something I'll say that he has that a lot of other characters don't. The kickoff is actually pretty convincing because he looks like he's intentionally hoisting his entire body up there. Now I'm really not sure where the green comes from because every other character really does look like their colors are built for the costume one. Alex and Elena, I guess, are some of the exceptions because green is much more color 2, like outfit 2, color 1. But sure, whatever. The pose he hits on impact is very, very, very fun though. It has a bit of the Kimberly thing going on, but not to the exact same extent. And it's so over the top and comic book-esque almost that I just don't care how impractical it is. Again, he's really rotating his entire torso the opposite direction to make that boot come up to most people's head level. Of course, not on Geef, but he looks like he's hitting a Sonic Adventure 2 pose, like. Now on hit, you have a lot of the black and gray coming through. I guess the green makes sense there. Maybe you could do something yellow, because having it just be red would make it feel too similar to Aki, but the green is just kind of throwing me off. I'm not gonna let it bother me too much, but it is just something to consider. It's so funny how he just hangs in the air in this ridiculous Shadow the Hedgehog pose. I am kind of a really big fan of that. I think, all that considered, he can go A tier. Yeah, I think that's another A tier just because I don't have any problems with it and I really do like the posing. And again, my only problem with it is the green coloring. Does that make it S tier? Yeah, I'm gonna say it does. That posing is so unique and cool that he sneaks up with the girlies, I guess. I've run out of characters to make convincing duos out of here, Sagat and Blanca. Now, I don't know much about a lot of fighting styles in this game, but I do know Muay Thai has a lot to do with elbows and shins, and that's all I'm seeing here. The elbow comes through extremely nice on contact. He has a little bit of blue sprinkled in there with mostly black and dark brown and a little bit of yellow, which all makes sense for colors that aren't on hit. There's a lot of Tiger coming through on that hit. The step into it, now this is the kind of exaggerated step I've been talking about the whole time. Of course it works for Sagat because he's 9 foot tall, gangly, and freakish. I really like how hard he commits himself to that attack, and then he pulls himself back up without much flourish, which is something I'd expect for Sagat, but you know, it's something more than just jumping back in. He has a bit of his foot shuffle going on there. I just love how hard he commits to this with the huge step in and the insane follow through. It's like you see his face on the other side. That's crazy, right? On punish counter, where's that blue coming from? Why does he have blue on it? Maybe to make it pop on certain stages? I don't know. Yeah, he's hitting you with the Tiger Elbow Explosion technique of death, so that really... Yeah? Yeah. Are you a tiger? That really big commitment lets you see his face. Oh my god, the grimace coming through there. Yeah, man, I know, right? I think that's going to be another S tier coming out from Sagat. Now, Blanca has got all the colors of the jungle and is doing a really nice flip, noticeably, without teleporting into the position. Like, there is a bit of snappiness to sell the fact that he's curling up into a ball, hanging there for midair, and then kicking his feet out to just throw himself at you, but I'm going to say all the color kind of makes a little more sense coming from Blanca, especially just because he's orange, green, and blue. Like, but yeah, sure, it can be red, who cares? I would like to see him kind of hang forward a little bit, kind of something that looks a little more like this to catch himself, because the fact that he catches himself so handily and just gets back into his idle leaves a little left to be desired, but I mean, it's nitpick. Yeah, you can see even at slow speed, it is kind of strange how he's just tucking and extending, but what are you gonna do? It's Blanca. On punish counter, yeah, he's hitting you with the Mini Marvel's Hulk special, where there's just an explosion of green, red, and blue. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense for Blanca, you know, those three colors. And even though this is one of those situations where it does feel like he should really be sending you, I think it helps a lot that he freezes in this position, so I can kind of forgive it not sending them, and at least he's not hitting them upwards, right? I think for Blanca, that's gonna be maybe a B tier? Yeah, a B tier. I thought about it hard enough, and I think I do just have to move Elena down a tier, which sucks because I love these two characters so much, but I can't play favorites. Alright, last two, we got DJ. This initial step has always kind of had the same snappiness that the end of Manon's has to me, where it feels like part of an animation they kind of sped up, but it's a little less noticeable just because DJ is such a fast-moving character in general, and he's got a lot of bounciness to him. The actual kick out, yeah, he takes a really nice pivot and just sticks his leg out completely horizontally. Really nice coloring around him. I really like that flourish. He's got a really nice flourish to get back into his idle pose. It just adds a lot. On hit even, I mean, that is just the Jamaican flag being punched out of you. Kicked, rather. He even does have a nice bit of, it's not entirely flowy, he has a nice build-up and force put into that kick when he does finally extend the kick out. That's nice, that's appreciated. And of course on punish counter, that's just a huge Jamaican explosion. I mean, it can't be described as anything else. And of course the pose he hits allows you to see his face, and he is often just cheesing, which lends this to be a really, really, really nice pose. DJ, I think, is going to get maybe an A tier. He's very close to S, the only difference being... What is the difference? DJ is going to get into S tier. This is just what happens when you have Flourish out of your Drive Impact. I don't make the rules, I just make tier lists. That's entirely based on my opinion. And finally, we have Rashid doing some form of flip. It's actually incredibly difficult to tell what's going on here. I'm pretty sure he's doing a sideways Blanca and bringing his foot down. That's kind of how I've always seen it. I guess if we slow down the game, yeah, he's doing something a bit similar to Jury, but this is more of a human-looking version of it, where he's just flipping over and hitting you with his foot on the way down. A lot of basic black and white, a nice foot smear there. On hit, a lot of orange comes through, that's really nice. And then on punish counter, still feels a bit messy. He's moving during this in a way that isn't as nice feeling as some of the other characters I've praised, because he's moving in a way where I feel like he should still be carrying momentum, but because of gameplay reasons he is stopped, so it looks like he's just kind of rotating in place. So unfortunately, last character of the video, I think Rashid goes in C tier, just because it's kind of a mess and I can't really tell what's going on, and even when he hits his punish counter, it's still kind of weird feeling, you know? Alright, I guess final thoughts. I'm pretty happy with how the tiers shook out. I mean, Street Fighter 6 just has incredible animation in general, so it's honestly going to be top heavy every time I do something like this, but again, these are not ordered within the tiers. If you have any questions about you know, which would be my favorite, I guess probably Aki, maybe Kimberly's, maybe Sagat's, I don't know. Dhalsim's is the only one that I feel kind of just fails completely as an attack, where it is an attack that where I thought he was doing one thing, but it turns out that the thing I thought he was doing actually confused me more than what he was doing in the first place. But yeah, that is my Street Fighter 6 Drive Impact Animation tier list. If you enjoyed this type of content, I would love to make more of it, so please let me know that you like it with a like and a comment. Share it to anyone who you think would like this type of video. Obviously, this concept is pretty directly stolen from mockrock, and I just like Street Fighter, so I'm biting it, sorry. But regardless of if you think it deserves to be shared around, thank you for sticking this far into the video, and I guess I will see you next time.